Hello and welcome to the channel. As always, like the video, and if you enjoyed the story, leave a comment on if you would want more. This fan fiction was not created by me, but in the description there is a link to the fanfic so you can show your support to the creator and read along. Without any more delay, let's dive into the story.
I hate debriefs. Would you be able to henge into an image of this man? The interrogator asked. It was standard procedure for shinobi being debriefed to transform into any and all shinobi they encountered. It made putting faces to names and techniques that much easier. Naruto shook his head in the negative. Henge required the user to have a clear picture of the person of interest in mind. Aside from the few details that he had already listed, Naruto couldn't get a clear picture of the man in his mind. The majority of the confrontation was shrouded in a haze of heat and redness, courtesy of the Kyuubi. Pale complexion, yellow eyes, long tongue. Here Naruto paused, shaking his head, having been forcibly reminded just how creepy the last bit was. There was no other word for it. Go on, the woman urged, sounding neither patient nor impatient. Merely bored, uninterested. Naruto wished he could be the same. He ran steady fingers through his hair, long since free of the grime of the latest mission, and composed himself again. Right, so, long tongue, average height probably, dark hair, it was long. He trailed off once more, searching his memory for more details to describe the still mysterious Jonin with. Can you remember anything more of the shinobi's appearance, Genin Uzumaki? The woman prodded. The blonde's eyes moved from their resting place at his feet to the face of his interrogator. She was a plain woman, utterly unremarkable save for ice-blue eyes that peered into him with every question. Career Genin, he mused absently, noting the lack of a flak vest. Probably. He shook his head in answer. No. And were there any other distinguishing marks or mannerisms? The nameless kunoichi moved from one area of question to another seamlessly, making Naruto start, focused as he still was on the man's appearance. Talked like a woman, Naruto said before he could stop himself. He winced sheepishly as the first emotion his interrogator showed manifested itself in a glare. Sorry. He had a feminine voice, liked to whisper, even hissed a bit. Laughed a lot, cackled. Didn't take any of us seriously, the blonde finished. Almost rightfully so, he thought, remembering how easily the man had dismantled Kurenai. He couldn't help the feeling of vindication that surfaced at having thrown the smug Jonin into a building shortly after. He was well aware that the only reason he had been able to do so was because the man had almost certainly not been expecting a Jinchuriki to manifest at the time. Although the man had known his name, had known all of their names, upon reflection. His teammates were brushed aside easily enough, as any truly experienced Jonin would be able to identify all of Konoha's major clans at a glance, but surely his name was classified, or at least not easily come by. He was an orphan, for one, and Naruto had little doubt that any record of his parentage had been struck immediately following his sealing. He supposed that it wasn't unreasonable for a Jonin of another village to know of him. He doubted there was a shinobi village on the continent that didn't have a file on him, given his status, but the man had seemed delighted at his presence. Like he knew exactly who he was, what he carried, and something beyond. Troubled, Naruto chanced a look at the room's third occupant. The sandaime sat behind his desk, hat off, pipe in hand, as stone-faced as he had been the night that Naruto had learned of the Kyuubi. He was troubled, that much was obvious to Naruto. The knowledge of it was doing little to soothe the boy's nerves, already put on edge due to his reflections. Did the shinobi use any ninjutsu, or any techniques that would, in your estimation, require the molding of chakra? Naruto blinked at the question. The confrontation had been short, despite what it may have felt like at the time, no longer than a minute or maybe two at the most. It had largely been taken up by the man speaking. The actual combat had lasted for no more than a few seconds. His killing intent, Naruto began, it was connected to some form of genjutsu. I can't speak for my teammates, but when it happened I saw a vision of myself being impaled with kunai and shuriken. Other than that, he had some way of manipulating his body. Out of the corner of his eye, Naruto noticed the sandaime had set down his pipe. Aged hands were folded on top of the desk, fingers interlaced, and the old man's eyes were narrowed just ever so slightly. Manipulating in what way, Uzumaki, the woman asked. Getting there, Naruto thought with impatience. Outwardly, he showed nothing. He was able to move weirdly. He could bend at least 90 degrees backwards and could just. The blonde searched for the right word, twist out of the way of things. It was unnatural. He hesitated to use the word unnatural, as by their very nature shinobi did very unnatural things, but it was the only way Naruto felt he could properly convey what had happened. No normal man, no normal shinobi should have been able to avoid his attacks like that. I see, the unremarkable woman said, paging through the notes she had been taking since the start of the debrief. Naruto shifted in his chair idly. No, you don't, he thought. And I suppose that brings us to the final segment of your mission, unless you have something more to add? The icy eyes locked on him. Naruto shook his head simply. He wanted to get this over with and get the hell out of the Hokage's office, though he suspected he would likely be here for some time. Debriefs were never held in the presence of the Hokage unless the Hokage himself was doing the debriefing, and that only happened when truly classified information was being discussed. And this had been no S-ranked mission, regardless of the clusterfuck it had become. Though I suppose I've always sort of been an exception to the rule. All the rules. Naruto had known that he was special from a young age, he just hadn't known how or why. The thought that something set him apart had been a small point of pride for the young boy, and had led to many of his more arrogant presumptions. Now, it merely hung over him. Just another thing that made his life just that little bit more difficult. That leaves us with the final part of the mission, I suppose. Your after-action report spoke of you being ambushed by she leafed through her notes, 12 shinobi, and that you dealt with it solely while your team moved on ahead? Her tone was just as dispassionate as it had been at the start of the interview, making Naruto wonder at just what kind of debriefs this woman handled. She didn't bat an eye at the thought of a genin killing 12 shinobi without help. Or maybe it was just because it was him. It was out of his mind as soon as the thought occurred. He didn't miss a beat, regardless. It was an attack, not an ambush. They had followed us, and Hyuga Hinata's Byakugan alerted us to their presence well before any attacks were made, he said formally. He wasn't sure why he felt the need to correct the woman, it wasn't as if the difference mattered in the slightest. And why was it that you dealt with the group personally, rather than with the help of your comrades? She seemed legitimately interested in this question, if the slight straightening of her posture was any indication. 'Cause they probably would have ended up dead before I could have done anything. The thought came unbidden. There was no real way of knowing how things would have turned out had Team 8 gotten involved in the fight, and Naruto was more than willing to have it that way. He had made the executive decision in the heat of the moment, and it had turned out okay in the end. One of my ninjutsu better allows me to deal with multiple threats than my comrades. I was also fresher, more alert, and my teammates had to be concerned with getting their sensei to safety. He ran a hand through his hair once more, eyes flickering about the room. The Sandaime had leaned back now, fingers steeped in a look of interest in his old eyes. Directly engaging the enemy would have put Yuhi Kurenai in danger. I decided, as de facto team leader, to deal with the shinobi on my own, so that Team 8 could get a head start and hopefully get themselves and their sensei to safety in case I failed. The thought of why a genin, not even 6 months out of the academy, would have the confidence and, in theory, the self-sacrifice to attempt to fight 12 men hung heavily. Naruto knew quite well that the answer was plain to all of the room's occupants. Ice blue eyes shifted in discomfort, glancing at the Hokage. He apparently found what they were looking for, as the woman began anew, yes. And you dealt with them in what way? I killed them. It must have been the utterly bland way in which he said it, for it couldn't have been the words, because the interrogator stopped short. Her blue eyes widened as they rose to meet Naruto's and stayed there for what felt like a minute, but was, in reality, only a few seconds. Blonde eyebrows slowly moved upwards, silently asking the woman opposite, "What else would you have me do?" She got the message, if the slightly flustered look that crossed her face was any indication. Her eyes turned downward, back to her clipboard so quickly that Naruto was surprised she hadn't hurt herself in the process. Yes, yes. She trailed off. Sarutobi came to her rescue. I think that will be enough. The rest of the mission specifics have already been covered by the rest of the debriefs and after-action reports. I'll be able to handle the rest of this session, Mei-san. If you'll leave your notes with me? The dismissal was clear, and the woman, Mei, rose quickly. She deposited her notes on the Hokage's desk and was out the door a moment later after a short bow. A quickly muttered Hokage-sama left in her wake. Silence filled the Oval Office as Naruto took the opportunity to move to his customary chair, the rightmost of the two laid out in front of the Sandame's desk. A sigh of satisfaction escaped his lips as he sunk into the chair. The old man kept the two most comfortable chairs in the whole village in his office, in Naruto's opinion. There was just the right amount of firmness, enough to give support while not sacrificing the cushion. Naruto always sat in the rightmost chair, no matter what. He knew that chair better than he knew the single chair in his apartment. It had gotten to the point a few years back that the old man had tried to trick him. Why don't you just sit in the other chair, Naruto-kun? The Sandame asked amusedly as he watched the demon container move the twin armchairs back to their usual positions. Better view, old man, the 9-year-old said simply, as if that was all the answer that could possibly be required. Finally finished, the blonde plopped down in his proper chair with his arms crossed and an expression of the purest satisfaction upon his whiskered face, daring the Hokage to make a case against him. Perplexed, Sarutobi turned to stare out of his window, something he did every day without fail. Upon spying his view of the village, the Hokage realized that, were he sitting in the leftmost chair, he wouldn't be able to see the face of the Yandame upon the Hokage monument. The window ended just after his own face from that vantage point in the room, whereas the view of the monument from the rightmost chair was unimpeded. Well, a soft smile graced the old man's lips as he beheld the sight, before turning back to his guest. I suppose you're right. He had no desire to see the face of his father, knowing now what the man had done to him, but he kept his seat for familiarity's sake. He had been in the Hokage's office so many times, in the chair so many times, that the thought of doing something different here and now was downright distasteful. Throughout all the twists, turns, and changes of his life, the Hokage's office remained the same. Naruto took some small comfort in that. Fond remembrances faded, and Naruto was left in the silence that had hovered in the Sandame's office since the woman, Mei, he reminded himself, had left. It wasn't heavy, or truly awkward. But it was far from the more companionable silences he had shared with Sarutobi as a child, when his much-used mouth had finally stopped moving a mile a minute and he had come up for air. Though I'm sure it is the last thing you wish to hear, I must ask, do you remember anything else of note from your confrontation, Naruto-kun? The Hokage questioned. Anything you might wish to tell me? The troubling thoughts of how the Jonin had known his name returned, and he brought his eyes to the Hokage's. He addressed Team 8 by their clan names, but he seemed to know me, personally. The blonde shrugged, mostly to avoid a shiver that was making its way up his spine. He seemed happy that I was there, for some reason. Indeed? It wasn't really a question. The Sandame quickly jotted the information down before leaning back in his chair. A weary look passed over the old man's face for a single, suspended second, before it was erased. Blue eyes narrowed as Naruto saw the reaction. Just who was this guy? He wondered. Out of nowhere, the Hokage made a single hand seal. The look of concentration that had rested on his aged face faded to a sly smile, prompting a raised set of eyebrows from Naruto. The blonde opened his mouth in question, but was halted when the Sandame raised a hand for his continued silence. If you'll give me a moment, Naruto, he said, and the double doors to the Oval Office swung open not a second after. A dog-masked ANBU strode in with purpose, a platter with 2 steaming hot containers of Ichirako ramen takeout in his hands. A second followed, a cooler filled with ice and chilled bottles of lemon tea in hand. Naruto's mouth dropped open. Dismissed, Sarutobi said simply. The 2 ANBU took their cue, retreating to the door and exiting, leaving twin calls of Hokage-sama behind. Sarutobi was entirely unfazed at having been delivered lunch by ANBU Black Ops members, and leaned back in his chair with a sigh of satisfaction. The chopsticks broke with a snap, and one steaming container was pulled over and opened with relish. The old man finished his first 2 bites before raising twinkling eyes to meet the still shocked blues of Naruto. I can assure you that this is, in fact, real, and not an elaborate genjutsu, Naruto-kun. I suggest you close your mouth before you begin to catch flies, and help an old man out in finishing this lunch. It would be a shame for such a well-prepared meal to go to waste, the Hokage stated wryly, the corners of his mouth twitching. Naruto couldn't help it, he burst out laughing, shattering the formerly tense atmosphere. Lunch served personally by ANBU, that's a reason to become Hokage, he said. And whatever happened to gaining the acknowledgement of the villagers, protecting them as is your sworn duty, the Sandaime quipped, an eyebrow quirked. Meaningless. Naruto waved away the statement dismissively as he snapped open and chugged a bottle of chilled tea. Now, getting lunch served to you by ANBU agents, that's real motivation right there. An index finger shook in articulation of the boy's point as he reached to the tray to remove one of the steaming boxes of ramen. I'm glad you approve, the Hokage stated, sarcasm evident. You should be, Naruto thought cheekily. Years previous, or perhaps maybe even months previous, before Asuma's death, he would have even said it. Now, he stayed silent, content to slurp his lunch and wait patiently for the Sandaime to arrive at the gist of this meeting. Sarutobi, for his part, didn't bother mincing words. Your actions during the mission were impressive. Regardless of the tools at your disposal, leading a team of genin through hostile territory is no mean feat. Naruto shrugged, electing to keep silent still. He had never gotten used to any of the praise that Asuma had ever heaped on him, regardless of the fact that he had sought it at every turn. The same applied here. His continued silence drew an undignified snort from the Hokage, in turn drawing a grin from Naruto. Come now, Naruto-kun. You were many things as a child, but quiet and modest? The Sandaime laughed lightly, genuinely. I think not, and none of ever truly grow so far from what we were as children, at least not at our very core. The blonde sighed. I did what I thought was necessary to get everyone back alive. He was sick of talking about the mission as a whole. From Yamato, to the ANBU who had met him and Team 8 at the border, to his own teammates, and finally to the debrief and now the Hokage, he had told and retold the ordeal far too many times. He had no problem doing so once more, he had done what had been necessary and had no regrets, but preferred not to. To think, he had once wished more than anything in the world to be acknowledged, to have people come up to him and ask him to tell them stories of missions past, legendary exploits, for surely a Hokage would have many stories. He shook his head, it was so tiresome. Thankfully, the Sandaime seemed to have no desire to hear of Naruto's tale, whether because of a similar mindset or because he had already heard it numerous times, and accepted Naruto's statement without ceremony. As would any in your position, I would like to think, said Sarutobi. But I doubt that many, if any, your age or rank, could actually follow through. Keeping a clear head in the field is no easy feat, even for shinobi far more experienced than you. Thank you, Hokage-sama. Sarutobi nodded absently, refilling his pipe and lighting it now that he had finished his food. Naruto continued to slurp away despite the more serious turn the meeting had taken. He was hungry, and the old man didn't mind. He felt more than saw the Hokage stand and make his way to the window. The cloth of the traditional robes rustling as the old man moved. Naruto knew without having to look that the Sandaime was surveying his village. Truly, having managed to pull your team from the ashes of near defeat is no mean accomplishment, especially as it has happened not once, but twice. Naruto fidgeted. And used to praise as he was, having the Hokage, of all people, glorify his achievements was uncomfortable. He didn't know how to respond. It is something worthy of note, and something worthy of recognition, Naruto-kun. Here, the Sandaime turned to face the blonde briefly, locking eyes. Solid gray bored into Naruto's blue, taking their measure. The blonde felt the need to shift and fidget, but managed to hold still through force of will. He couldn't help but feel as if the Sandaime could see right through him, dissect him with a thought and leave him bare of all of his secrets. It was a similar feeling to the one he got when he spoke with the Kyuubi. He was nothing before this legend of a man, and he knew it well. It is something worthy of reward, Sarutobi finished. The appraising look faded, replaced with something akin to pride as the man's lips curved upwards into a sort of half-smile. "Hokage-sama?" Naruto asked. He straightened unconsciously. Could he possibly mean? A prideful smile spread across the Hokage's face as he looked down at the boy who had been a sort of surrogate grandson in his youth. To rise above the hatred of the villagers and become a skilled shinobi was something worth commending, and Naruto was well on his way to becoming exceptional. He already was in some ways. You've shown leadership abilities above and beyond what can reasonably be expected of a genin, any genin, not just one your age. I would be loath to let such qualities go unrecognized, or unpunished, as it may turn out to be, the Sandaime stated with humor. Responsibility is the price of competence, you'll find, Naruto-kun, and the rank of Chunin isn't one handed out without just cause. Naruto would have been ashamed to acknowledge that his eyes widened almost comically at the Hokage's declaration, his mouth dropping open in surprise. He couldn't help it, however. Here, though, Sarutobi sighed, and Naruto felt an odd mix of emotions take hold. Beyond all the pride, the satisfaction and vindication, there was trepidation. Did he really want to become a Chunin right now? The answer was a resounding yes, as the promotion would undoubtedly open doors for him to train and grow. And yet, he was hesitant to leave his team behind. While it was true that many teams remained together, it was still very possible that he would be shuffled into a new unit. He had built more than just friendship and camaraderie with Ino and Kiba, he had built a family of sorts. And he wasn't so naive as to believe that he would be able to see them regularly once promoted. The Hokage wasn't finished, however. I have one final assignment for you as a genin, Naruto-kun. Sarutobi turned back to face his village as he said it, eyes locked on the faces of his predecessors and successor. A confused haze settled over Naruto. He knew it showed on his face, but the Hokage couldn't see it, so he said, "What do you mean, old man?" slipping into his old method of speech. The Hokage didn't hand out special assignments to genin, as far as the blonde knew. The exception to all the rules, again, he mused. You are ready for a promotion, Naruto-kun, of that I'm sure. Yamato has reported much in regards to your skills and development, and your accomplishments in your few missions clearly show that you can handle the workload and uncertainty of B-ranked missions. Sarutobi turned to face the boy once more, his face serious this time. Tell me, what do you know of the Chunin exams? Naruto shrugged hesitantly. They serve as a way for genin to be promoted outside of wartime, are held once per 6 months, and are rotated throughout the ninja villages. Indeed. What you, along with most genin, don't know, is that the exams are a substitute for war, a way for the villages to show off their best and brightest for the sake of reputation, in a way. Naruto's mind put the pieces together rather quickly, once the Sandaime had made his declaration. So you want to show me off? He had a hard time saying it, knowing how arrogant the statements sounded to his own ears. He was relieved when the Sandaime gave him an encouraging nod. In a manner of speaking. The exams are being held in Konoha this year, only a few weeks from now, and we will be expected to put forth a good showing. For one as young as you to participate, and to do as well as you will, he trailed off, and Naruto filled in the blanks for himself. All of the members of your graduating class have been endorsed to participate as well, but only you will have a guaranteed promotion waiting for you at the end of it all, Sarutobi finished. Pride was written all over the aged legend's face as he spoke, and Naruto felt the weight of obligation come to rest on his shoulders. The Hokage was, in effect, staking the majority of Konoha's reputation in the upcoming exams on him. He would be expected to participate, and excel to the point where a promotion was not only warranted, but expected. Beyond even that, the Sandaime looked to have all the confidence in the world that Naruto would perform to his expectations. No pressure, Naruto. The blonde leaned back in his chair, digesting the assignment. He would be competing against genin from around the continent, and he'd have to better than all of them. He chuckled lightly, eliciting a raised brow from the Hokage. No pressure, right? / You're good. Naruto ignored the words, just as he had ignored Uchiha Sasuke's presence in his clearing for the past 5 minutes. He only had use of the small training ground until some shinobi of rank decided that they wanted it and ordered him out. He intended to make the most of his short time, and, as much as he might respect Sasuke's skills, Naruto wasn't about to let the boy cut into his training time unless he had something to offer. He snatched up 6 shuriken from his weapons pouch and hurled them. Each one impacted a separate target attached to a separate wooden pole. 2 bullseyes. You almost beat me. Almost, Naruto agreed, finally stirred from silence. Another 6 throwing stars were grabbed and thrown. 1 more bullseye and 2 clangs where the new shuriken impacted the old perfect throws. That makes you better than everyone else in class, Sasuke continued. If he was annoyed by Naruto's avoidance, he didn't show it. All that was visible was the genius trademark aloofness. Maybe, returned Naruto. Shino and Kiba both have better form, and more strengths to play to, an inner voice that sounded like Guy told him. He threw another 6 shuriken. 6 thumps, no bullseyes, no clangs. The blonde scowled. What is it you want, team? He asked Sasuke grumpily. He turned to face the raven-haired boy fully, pinning him with a glare. Still, Sasuke was unmoved. Asshole. You're good, Sasuke repeated. Said that already? The Uchiha finally gave in to his instincts and frowned. Naruto repressed a smile. Do I really have to spell it out for you, Dobe? The suppressed smile became an open scowl. Guess so, team. What's so important that the mighty and amazing Uchiha Sasuke is bothering me? Don't you have better things to do? Call him petty, but the name Dobe struck a nerve with him. He wasn't the dead last anymore, damn it. Sasuke stayed rooted in place, standing rigidly at the entrance to Naruto's clearing, hands at his sides. You're good, and you weren't good before. You were dead last 2 months ago. How? What happened? Naruto shrugged. Started doing some stuff different, started listening to some people, started caring some more, trying harder. Why? Naruto's eyes snapped to Sasuke's onyx orbs at the syllable. But he didn't see the usual derision he got from people when they asked him why he did things. He didn't see the polite curiosity or indulgence that he got when he spoke to the Hokage. Naruto saw 2 eyes sizing him up, assessing him. He straightened almost unconsciously. I've got some people that. That what? That I need to kill? Naruto asked himself. People that I've gotta be stronger than. He expected a shrug, a laugh, a put-down or an insult to his skills. He didn't expect understanding in the eyes of the class genius. He didn't expect a nod. And he didn't expect. So do I. Wind whistled as the air was cut. Sharpened, matte black steel glinted ominously, wires as thin as they were deadly trailing in its wake. 6 thumps sounded as the blades met wood, and the target grunted in pain. And then the world exploded into fire as a dragon made of flames roared its fury. Or is it the dragon that makes the flames? Goddamn, Naruto thought with no small amount of awe as he watched his clones baking via Sasuke's latest instrument of destruction. That coordination with the wires can't be easy. Even with the Sharingan. The raven-haired Uchiha let the wires fall from his mouth silently, and turned to face the blonde. His face was blank, save for the smallest gleam of satisfaction that rested in his Sharingan eyes. Naruto would have been hard-pressed to catch the expression had he not known Sasuke as well as he did. Not bad, Naruto ventured, actually managing to draw a snort from his companion. A bit slow-moving at the get-go, and you'd have to have your opponent backed into a bit of a corner for them to not notice the different flight paths. Not bad though. Thanks, Dobe. Sasuke's sarcasm would have been evident to a deaf man. Naruto's face darkened for an instant before he mastered himself. Sasuke had always been able to get under his skin with just a word. Bastard. Something Kakashi showed you, he asked instead, genuinely curious. Doesn't seem like his style, Naruto mused. Doesn't look like something that gets taught, really. Sasuke confirmed his thoughts with a shake of his head. Something you came up with? Sasuke remained silent, electing to retrieve his used shuriken from being pinned to a training log. The log itself was all but burned to a crisp and falling apart in pieces, ash gently floating to the ground. The blonde scowled, both at Sasuke's non-reaction, though that was simply par for the course with the Uchiha, and at the reminder of one of Asuma's original techniques. The Hokage had been kind enough to pass on many of Asuma's personal jutsu notes to Naruto after his son's death, as the old man had no use for them. Many had been futon in nature, while most of the others were katon. He'd have to complete the elemental conditioning tests for the fire element before he would be ready to try any of those. And he was still plowing his way through Earth. Something you picked up then, Naruto concluded, having taken Sasuke's silence as a no. That was what it usually was. The Uchiha pocketed his strewn gear and turned, mimicking Naruto by leaning against one of the remaining, intact training posts. Something like that. Had Naruto's suspicions not already been aroused, and had he not known his friend as well as he did, he likely would have missed the gleam in the boy's eyes as he spoke. It was a gleam that the blonde had long ago determined to be madness. It wasn't overt, it was subtle, hidden, yet very much there. It was the tiny spark of insanity that Naruto knew all truly powerful shinobi possessed. It was what drove them. It was what set them apart. It was what gave them their edge. Naruto knew that he, himself, possessed that same insanity. That same drive, that same need for excellence that wouldn't let him stop until his goal had been achieved or he was nothing more than a corpse. On some days he wondered who was the crazier of the two of them, him or Sasuke. He didn't honestly wish to know the answer. Itachi, Naruto's mind supplied. The shuriken technique that Sasuke had just demonstrated had come from his brother. It was yet another of Uchiha Itachi's homespun techniques that Sasuke had happened to witness as a child. It was yet another technique that Sasuke had been determined to master, something to put him on some measure of even footing with the man whose genius had made shinobi 20 years his senior look like mere academy students when he was but 13 years old. Survive, Uzumaki Naruto. Words whispered on a midnight breeze almost seemed to drift past Naruto's ears, and the blonde barely repressed a shudder. Dimly, it occurred to the blonde that the same man was pushing both himself and Sasuke to greater things than all of their peers, Sasuke so as to kill the man and avenge his family, Naruto so as to survive against the might of an organization of S-rank shinobi after the biju in his gut. And even with everything that's happened, I'm nowhere close to where I need to be. The blonde always did his best to keep his mind off his skill, or lack thereof, in comparison to those who would hunt him for his burden. It always depressed him. And it didn't help that he was always, in the not-so-deep recesses of his mind, wondering when some S-ranked monster might spring from the shadows and obliterate his life. The telltale whisper of a kunai shattered his thoughts. Naruto dipped his head slightly, letting the throw that was only meant to get his attention clatter off his forehead protector. Sasuke raised an eyebrow as the blonde glared. Didn't know you could look so deep in thought, idiot. Can't be good for that brain of yours, might pop a blood vessel. Blue eyes rolled instinctively at the predictable slight against his intelligence. You keep thinking that, asshole, if it helps you maintain that ego of yours. God knows you need to think you're better than me at something. TCH. Sasuke said nothing more, electing to stride out of the clearing in the direction of the village. Naruto fell into step beside him. The silence stretched for a few minutes, neither participant in any need to break it. Naruto, predictably, ended it, however. I take it you guys got nominated. It wasn't a question. HN. It was a positive grunt, Naruto noted. It came as no surprise. The village had been buzzing with the anticipation for the Chunin exams coming up, and Naruto knew from the Hokage that all of the rookie genin teams had been put forth as participants, should they so choose to, of course. Naruto knew quite well that every single team was going to participate. Still, bit surprising, though, given what you've said about your team's dynamic. And, indeed, Team 7's lack of cohesion apparently hadn't changed since he and Sasuke had last talked about it, some short time before Naruto's mission to Wave Country. The Uchiha rolled his eyes. Kakashi's smart enough to see a lost cause when it's right in front of him. Haruno's too immature to ever be considered for Chunin, and Nara's too lazy. He implied pretty heavily that he only put us in as a learning experience. Think the dynamic duo picked up on it? Sasuke sent him a withering look at his nickname. Nara's lazy, but the louse has a brain that he uses, whether he wants people to know or not. Haruno's got a blind spot to anything that she doesn't like bigger than the Hokage monument. I doubt anything can get through that skull of hers unless she wants it to. Or it gets beaten in, Naruto surmised. Sasuke nodded sagely. You think that's what Hataki's after? TCH, probably. The Uchiha gave a long-suffering sigh that made Naruto's eyes roll instinctively. So melodramatic. Kakashi knows his subject but he can't teach people who don't want to learn, Naruto surmised. Sasuke's annoyed look at being cut off faded as he nodded. Got it in one, dope, he said. Naruto shrugged his shoulders and interlaced his fingers behind his head. Who knows? Maybe this whole thing'll be fun? HN. It better be, Sasuke said imperiously. I need some real competition. The blonde barked a laugh. I'm insulted. The Uchiha rolled his eyes, though a hesitant smirk played across his lips. You know what I mean, idiot. Have to see how the other villages measure up. See how I compare, not that there's any real doubt, mind you. Naruto brushed the casual arrogance away with practiced ease. Gotta measure your capacity. I feel you. From the corner of his eye, the blonde observed the Uchiha's well hidden, but still visible flinch at his words. He didn't mention it. They had reached the village proper and stopped just outside. Well, places to go, people to see. You know the drill, Uchiha. HN, whatever, loser. Just don't let Yamanaka screw with your mind too much. The genius tilted his head to the side and regarded the blonde for a moment. But then, I suppose it's a bit too late for that, isn't it? Smirking devilishly at his parting shot, Sasuke stepped into Shunshin with a pop, leaving a sputtering blonde in his wake. Naruto shook his head. TCH, asshole. Channeling chakra, he took a single step forward, and let his own Shunshin carry him. He reappeared outside the Yamanaka flower shop, following through by transitioning seamlessly into a walk. Outwardly, he showed no expression. Inwardly, he was grinning like a loon at how cool he must have looked to any observant passers-by. The startled and slightly odd look of a woman whose path he crossed on his way to the door only reinforced his self-absorption. Oh yeah, I'm awesome. The door opened on oiled hinges, and the tinkling of the welcome bell greeted his ears. The aroma of 1,000 different flowers made itself known, and the blonde found himself with a smile on his face. It smelled like Ino, or, rather, Ino smelled like her family's shop, and thoughts of the fairer of his two teammates almost always brought a smile to Naruto's whiskered face these days. A man with long blonde hair, slightly lighter than Naruto's own, sat at the attendant's desk, nose buried in a book. The welcoming bell alerted him to a presence in his shop, and Yamanaka Inoichi's eyes rose to look at Naruto, a greeting on his lips. Welcome to the Yamanaka flower shop. I think I already know how I can help you, Uzumaki-san, the semi-retired jonin said wryly. Unless my daughter isn't the reason you've decided to pay us a visit. Afraid not, sir, Naruto returned. Figures, the Yamanaka clan head murmured before he called Ino. You have a visitor. Naruto shook his head in bewilderment. It always unsettled him seeing a man he knew to be both a clan head and an A-ranked jonin shinobi so at ease in domestic life. Coming, Dad. Who is it? Naruto heard the voice of his teammate ask. Your teammate, the man said ambiguously. He shared an amused glance with Naruto, both males knowing how the answer would annoy Ino. The sound of steps coming down the back stairs reached both their ears. Which teammate, Dad? Honestly. The smart one, Naruto said with a smile as Ino emerged. She was clothed in a white, V-neck t-shirt and a pair of denims. The blonde girl scoffed, none too politely, but smiled. I don't have a smart teammate. Try again. The good-looking one? Naruto ventured. The girl gave her father a peck on the cheek and a goodbye, before slipping on her sandals and leading Naruto out. It's better, but it sounds like something Kiba would say. Naruto spared the Yamanaka patriarch a nod as he left the shop, and received one in return. Inoichi had always treated him with the same indifference he treated everyone else with, and Naruto wasn't ashamed to admit that it pleased him. Feeling normal wasn't something he often got to do, and he relished every opportunity. He returned his attention to Ino. Probably. It's true though, he continued. We all know I'm the best looking one on the team, Naruto, Ino quipped casually, flipping her long hair over her right shoulder and hitting Naruto in the face. She smiled sweetly at him in response to his mild glare. Never been any doubt as to that, Naruto's subconscious murmured. The boy quashed the urge to blush with sheer force of will. If you say so, was all he said in return. Oh, but I do. And we both know that I'm never wrong. Do we now? Ino nodded emphatically, a serious look on her pretty face. Yes, we do. Naruto couldn't help but chuckle, shaking his head. His eyes glittered with mirth in the twilight, reflecting the customary lanterns Kanahans lit just before dark. And what about that time you and Kiba got into it over how to properly manage Akamaru's stomach? Doesn't count, she answered immediately. And why's that? It's Akamaru. Kiba and his clan's judgment is always gonna win out when it comes to dogs. Even then, I still think they handled it wrong, the blonde girl sniffed. You think that the clan that specializes in their canine familiars is wrong when it comes to how to sort out a dog's stomach problems? Naruto asked as the duo weaved in and out of the evening traffic aimlessly. The boy snatched up a free sample some clerk was offering as he passed by. It was nothing a good herbal blend wouldn't have sorted out. Ino was quite sure of herself. And besides, we both know I'm always right in an argument with Kiba, she said, swiftly swiping Naruto's sample before it could reach his mouth. The whiskered boy glared impotently as she chewed the piece of chicken with pleasure. He settled for rolling his eyes and grabbing a new bite from a different clerk. He made sure to eat it quickly this time, giving his companion a flat look when she flashed him a grin. Well, that's for sure, he conceded. Doesn't prove that you're always right, though. She raised a well-manicured eyebrow at him. Have you ever won an argument with me? Naruto chuckled. I don't bother getting into arguments with you, Ino. Because you know I'll always win. Because I know they won't go anywhere, he finished. Kinda like this one. Ino, quite maturely, stuck her tongue out at him. And speaking of not going anywhere, where are we going, exactly? Naruto asked. He had dropped by the flower shop for a quick hello, and was now on a trek to nowhere with his ever-confusing teammate. You're buying me dinner, Ino stated quite confidently. I am? MHM. Says who? Naruto asked with a laugh in his voice. His companion favored him with a withering look. You mean you drop by my house at dinner time, lead me out into the village, and you don't plan to buy me dinner? I thought that's what we were doing. Who the hell said that? I know it wasn't me. And what do you mean lead you into the village? Naruto asked, incredulous. I just came by to say hello, you pulled me out of the shop. Stopping in the middle of the street, Ino let the traffic flow around them as she batted her eyelashes at Naruto, smiling sweetly. Are you saying you don't want to buy me dinner? Oh, for the love of God. Never said that. So you do want to buy me dinner? Ino squealed. She looked for all the world to have received the greatest gift in the universe. Why not? Naruto conceded. If he bothered to protest, she would just lead him around long enough for him to cave anyway. He figured he'd save himself the trouble. Yay! And why wouldn't you want to buy me dinner? She asked rhetorically as she latched onto his left arm. You get to bask in my presence for even longer. Naruto couldn't help the smile that blossomed on his face. How could anyone say no to that? I dunno. I'm pretty amazing. Not suffering from a lack of self-esteem, are we? Ino favored him with her best bitch, please look. Not even slightly. Didn't think so, but I'm glad we cleared it up. Are you? Yup. They drifted in silence for a few minutes, still with no destination in mind, before Naruto decided to get the whole dinner part of this impromptu date over with before it got too late. Is it a date, he wondered, not really knowing the answer. So, where do you want to eat, he finally asked. Dunno. Pick some place. Why don't you? Ino shrugged. I'm not great at picking. Too many choices, I always regret not eating someplace else afterwards. Am I seeing a flaw in Yamanaka Ino's perfection? Himak gasped. His companion merely scoffed. Hardly, she said. The girl elbowed him in the ribs for good measure. Naruto just laughed. They eventually settled on a sushi stall just off the main avenue, close to the administration building. Naruto had been more than a little disgruntled when Ino had told him, in no uncertain terms, that ramen was not an option. They had left 20 minutes later, Naruto's pockets relieved of many of the ryo he had been carrying. The blonde had some disposable cash these days, what with the upgraded pay he received from the missions that had gone awry in Zabuza's bounty, but he hadn't planned on paying for dinner for someone other than himself. Naruto-kun, where exactly are we going? Ino asked softly. Night had fallen completely, and Naruto realized that he had been leading them towards the Hokage monument. Old habits die hard, he thought wryly. He debated his course of action for a second, before deciding to proceed as he would have normally, even with Ino there. It wasn't like he was the only ninja who ever sat on the old Hokage's heads, he was likely just the most frequent visitor. Up, he said. He didn't give Ino time to question him before he gripped her tightly, lifted her slightly off the ground, and whirled into Shunshin. They reappeared on top of the Sandame's head less than a moment later, with Naruto significantly more composed than the distinctly ruffled Ino. A shriek escaped her lips that hadn't had time to properly form back on the ground. Don't do that, she practically screamed at him as he let her down. She hit him on the chest when all the boy did was laugh. Ah, but it's so much fun, Ino-chan, he said cheekily. She only glared at him. Don't be complaining. You've got the best view in the village. Naruto turned his gaze from his pretty teammate to the breathtaking view of Konoha proper, alit as it was with an orange glow that emanated from the hundreds of lanterns. He felt Ino sidle up next to him, her own eyes trained on the village. It is nice, she whispered. Naruto snorted. Nice? That's it? The girl shrugged. I've seen better. Oh yeah? When? Naruto was skeptical. His companion grinned impishly at him. Every time I look in the mirror, Naruto-kun. The ensuing laughter might have been heard by the whole village. Finally managing to regain his breath, Naruto favored his teammate with a shake of his head. You're impossible. You love me. They drifted into silence for a time, neither needing to fill the quiet. At some point, they sat down, Ino curled up against Naruto's right side as a cool breeze whispered past. Naruto, the blonde girl asked after a time. The whiskered boy looked down to find Ino's head resting on his shoulder, her gaze turned outwards. Thanks. He gave the top of his companion's head a questioning look. For this. Ino gestured with her free right arm to the view they were currently enjoying. And for getting me out of my house. Naruto neglected to mention that she had been the one to drag him out into the village. My mom's been suffocating lately, she began. Ever since Wave, really, but this last mission really pushed her over the edge. Naruto, unfamiliar with the concept of parental concern, simply let her continue, doing his best to ignore the familiar pang of loneliness that arose every time he was reminded that his parents were both dead and gone. Unbidden, his eyes flickered to his father's face to his left. They stayed for less than a second. She married my dad at the tail end of his active duty career, when he was being groomed to be the next clan head. She's not really used to having anyone she really knows and loves in danger, and it's scaring her. Ino sighed, and Naruto felt her whole body sag slightly against him. She keeps trying to talk to me about taking up an administration position. Or at least something away from real missions. And your dad? Surely he understands, Naruto ventured tentatively. He was unused to having people pour their hearts out to him. He couldn't say that he liked it, but it was Ino. And for that reason and that reason alone he would do his best. She shook her head. He does, but he doesn't stop her. I'm pretty sure some part of him doesn't want me in the field either. He just sits by and lets her nag and nag and nag, and it just gets me. They don't get it. They don't get it, or they don't care. I don't want to be just some career genin or mid-level chunin who works in the village all the time. That's not what a kunoichi does. Naruto found himself nodding along with her, though he was a little surprised by her vehemence. He had felt much the same as a child, back when becoming Hokage had been the only thing that mattered to him. And he still felt it a bit now. The allure of excellence, of leaving your mark on the world, it was something many shinobi felt and dreamed of, though only a few ever achieved. The fear of anonymity and mediocrity was a real one, and was likely doubly terrifying to a proud perfectionist like Ino. No, it's not, Naruto found himself saying, though he had no idea where it was coming from. And that's not what you're gonna do. He said it with a certainty that left no doubt as to his confidence in her. He even surprised himself a little with it, realizing that he had quite a bit of faith in his fellow blonde. His respect for her had risen astronomically since the formation of Team 10, and she never failed to beat his expectations. She was someone Naruto not only liked, but felt that he could trust with his back at all times. How can you be so sure? Ino asked meekly from his side. The fear of failure had reduced her voice to a near whisper. How can you know? Because I know you. Ino's blue-green eyes lifted to meet Naruto's steady gaze. The boy didn't waver for a moment, keeping his eyes locked on his companion's until she averted her gaze, a small flush that Naruto could feel rather than see adorning her cheeks. He shifted his eyes back to the village, basking in its nighttime glory once more. Believe me, if you don't believe yourself. I do, Naruto heard her whisper as she turned her own gaze back to the village. Silence stretched once more, and Naruto found himself lost in thoughts of himself, the girl at his side, and the future. The thoughts fell to nothingness when his brain registered a soft pressure on his right cheek, and he realized that Ino was kissing him. He couldn't help the wave of goosebumps that covered him as he tried to repress a shiver and stiffened. Slowly, Ino's lips left his cheek, and Naruto turned his face to meet that of his teammates. Their eyes met and held, and by some unspoken agreement leaned towards each other. Their lips met in the middle, tentatively, softly, and stayed for a few seconds that, to Naruto, felt like nearly a minute. He pulled back slightly, opening the eyes that he hadn't realized he had closed, and watched Ino do the same. A small smile flitted across her lips, and Naruto couldn't help himself and did the same. Again, by unspoken agreement, their lips met, and Naruto came to the conclusion that he liked kissing Ino. Might have to do it again sometime, some distant part of his brain supplied. They broke after a minute of testing the waters, smiling slightly at each other the whole time. Leaning back, Naruto shifted so that his right arm was wrapped around Ino's chest, pulling her into him. Been meaning to do that for a while now, his companion said quietly. Naruto nodded. Think you might do it again? Ino shrugged. I'll think about it. He chuckled throatily, pulling his teammate into a one-armed embrace. No words passed between them for some small amount of time, before. You do realize that Kiba's gonna give us so much shit for this. Oh yeah. The twin double doors opened with their characteristic squeal. As per the usual, the eyes of every genin in the room shifted to the newcomers, silently appraising. Team 10 paid their counterparts no heed as they strode in without pause, Naruto in the lead, the trio not bothering to stop and stare at the dozens of genin already in the examination room. Eyes forward and strides confident, the Konoha team moved to a corner of the room that was unoccupied, on the left as they walked in. The three sat down in a line, backs to the wall and facing the door. The eyes of the room stayed fixed on them for nearly a full minute before gradually going back to whatever had held their attention before. The silence that had held dominance in the room faded to the hum of idle chatter as the teams relaxed once more. Almost directly across the room from the newly arrived Team 10, a trio of nondescript Konoha genin observed. "I count 3, the only female of the 3 said. 4, the 2 boys stated simultaneously. They exchanged quick grins as the girl looked exasperated. "Who'd I miss? I got the Suna team, 1 Kusa team, and the Oto squad." "You're off your game today, Yamanaka," Kiba snarked quietly from under his henge. He neatly blocked the sharp elbow to his ribs that the disguised Ino sent his way. "You missed the Konoha team off to the back." "The older ones?" "Yup," Naruto spoke up from Ino's left. He was disguised as a tall boy with close-cropped brown hair and a small scar above his right eye. One of the masked ones was about to dispel the illusion before the silver-haired one stopped him. "Close call then." The genjutsu had been Ino's idea. Having discreetly bypassed the disguised room 301 on the floor below, the female blonde of Team 10 had come up with the idea to cover themselves in a henge and enter the real room 301, while an illusionary trio would enter later on. By checking the number of people or teams that recognized both a henge and a genjutsu just by being exposed to it, not to mention the ones who connected the dots and suspected both the henge Team 10 and their illusionary doppelgangers, the 3 could neatly identify many of the more formidable genin in the exam. "Well, that shows us which ones can actually sense a genjutsu and which ones just kept on up the stairs," Kiba said again, a small chuckle escaping his lips. "That was the idea, idiot. Thanks for pointing out the obvious." Ino's sarcastic reply drew an eye roll from Naruto. "Here we go again." "Hey! Don't be calling me an idiot, Blondie. Me and Akamaru sniffed out the genjutsu down below just as quick as you did." The red-headed Ino opened her mouth, a biting reply about relying on his familiar's heightened senses no doubt on her lips, but Naruto beat her to the punch. "Shut up, both of you. You're gonna blow our cover if you keep this up." The boy's patience was thin with both of his teammates. His statement was met with a grudging nod from Kiba, but Ino scoffed lightly. "Come off it, Naruto. No one's paying any attention to us anymore, us or us over there," she finished with a vague gesture in the direction of their doppelgangers. Naruto's rebuke was as cold as ice. "We're in an exam with the best genin from every village. Someone's watching us, we just don't know it. And even if they're not, you really want to attract attention in a room chock full of people who are probably gonna be trying to kill us pretty soon? I know I don't." His fellow blonde, under normal circumstances of course, grimaced with a nod. Her gaze turned back to the room at large, but not before Naruto caught the slight look of hurt in her eyes that couldn't be masked. Naruto winced. "Look, I'm sorry. I'm just on edge with this whole exam. Nerve-wracking, you know?" Both his teammates nodded, and Ino gave him a hesitant, reassuring smile. "We get it, Naruto," she whispered. She covered his hand with her own and gave it a squeeze. The boy couldn't help the quick smile that spread across his face at the contact. To Ino's right, Kiba rolled his eyes as he noticed the byplay. "Please tell me you guys aren't gonna get all lovey-dovey on me now that you're making out. If you are, just let me know and I'll kill myself." His quip drew a glare from Ino and a flush from Naruto. Before either of them had the chance to retort, however, the telltale squeaking of the double wooden doors heralded the entrance of yet another team. Naruto dropped Ino's hand and formed the cross-shaped seal for the Kage Bunshin, his signal. The 3 shadow clones that were in the spaces that the illusionary Team 10 occupied stared back at their creator and nodded a single time. Ino took her cue, layering an illusion over hers, Naruto's, and Kiba's current position. All 3 members of Team 10 executed a seamless kawarimi with their counterparts, appearing on the opposite side of the room and staring back at their former disguises. An impulse tingling, Naruto lightly tapped his fellow blonde on the shoulder, letting her know that his clones had performed their own henges. Ino dropped her illusion without a word, her eyes swiveling to take in the forms of the new team, Naruto's shadow clones doing the same. In the commotion of the doors opening once more, no one had noticed Team 10's deception. Naruto's own blue eyes looked to the doors, and the boy couldn't repress a smile when he saw Team 7 enter, followed closely by Team 8. Choji and Shikamaru were engaged in conversation at the back, while Shino and Hinata stuck close to each other. Predictably, Sasuke was the first into the room, followed closely by Sakura. The Uchiha paused just inside the room, onyx eyes calculating and seemingly surveying all the occupants with a single glance. The imperious look that Naruto was so familiar with settled itself on Sasuke's face as the boy led the two rookie teams into room 301, and the blonde couldn't help but roll his eyes. Sasuke will be Sasuke. Well, look what the cat dragged in, Kiba drawled loudly, eyes glittering. Naruto almost rolled his eyes at the ever-predictable taunt. Ino had no such restraint. The eyes of everyone in the room immediately shifted to Kiba, Sasuke's included. The trademark, ever-familiar sneer fell into place as both rookie teams moved to join Team 10. Better what the cat dragged in than what the dogs left in the kennels, mutt. How's your family? Sasuke returned. His voice was bored but his eyes glittered at the prospect of one of his favorite pastimes. Play nice, you two, Naruto interjected, before Kiba had the chance to make a comment about Sasuke's family that would earn him a quick ticket to pain. We're all friends here. TCH, it was Sasuke's drawl this time. Though some of us are better friends than others, HN? The words were said in the same bored voice, but Naruto easily caught the undercurrent of annoyance in them. The blonde's mind connected the dots quickly, noticing his friend's pink-haired teammate looking at Ino weirdly. Sakura must be more annoying than usual since she found out about me and Ino, Naruto surmised. He offered his friend a shrug for his troubles and nothing more. The Uchiha settled for rolling his eyes. How's Kurenai? Naruto asked Team 8 at large, once the posturing had finished. He hadn't seen the injured Jonin since Kiba had been discharged from Konoha's medical center. She had still been recovering from her stab wound when Naruto had last checked, though he felt she must have been out by now. Well, Naruto-san, Shino answered. Choji was still talking pleasantly with Shikamaru, and Hinata was never one to speak unless she absolutely had to. She is almost fully recovered from her injuries and wishes for us to pass on her thanks for your actions during the mission. I have no doubt she would like to do so personally at her earliest convenience, though I do not know when that is. Naruto nodded his acceptance and thanked Shino quickly. Got the personality of a brick wall, that one. Meanwhile, Ino and Sakura had managed to get themselves into an argument of some kind. The volume was quickly escalating, and Naruto moved to shut the two up before someone beat him to it. Can you guys shut up over here? A quiet voice asked. The three teams turned to face the silver-haired, ponytailed genin who had stopped his teammate from dispelling Ino's genjutsu. You're all rookies, right? Fresh out of the academy. This isn't some school field trip, you know. And you are? Kiba asked for the group. The dog ninja was clearly unimpressed by the older Konoha nin's rebuke. Kabuto. Yukushi Kabuto, the older boy said with an easy smile. And you guys oughta start paying attention to your surroundings. The 9 rookies took their cue and glanced about the room. Most of the occupants were absorbed in their own business, or watching their competitors, looking for an edge. There were a select few, however, that were eyeing the grouping of Konoha ninja like they were pigs ripe for slaughter. Among them were the Otogekure team that Naruto and Team 10 had pegged as dangerous earlier, and a few different Amegekure squads that looked to be on the verge of committing murder in the examination room. It was the Reinin that Kabuto gestured to, a serious look on his face. See those Reinin over there? They're rather well known for having short tempers. I'd suggest piping down before you cause a scene. Everyone's nerves are a bit frayed cause of the exam, and you never know when someone's composure might slip. Good advice, Shikamaru grunted. The lazy genius was far from spoiling for a fight. My pleasure, Kabuto said, and the easy smile returned. You guys remind me of how I used to be. Sakura took the opportunity to pounce. Kabuto, right? She continued at his encouraging nod, so this is your second time taking the exam? The easy smile faded into the range of self-deprecating. 7th actually, Kabuto admitted, amid the myriad of scoffs and expressions of disbelief. Twice a year for the past 3, and now this one. You must be pretty experienced with these then, Sakura continued, though she seemed less enthusiastic about accepting any form of help from someone who had failed so many times. Naruto didn't blame her, as his first impulse was to dismiss the older genin out of hand for the exact same reason. The blonde, however, was curious. Weird. He should have passed by now. Or died, Naruto thought morbidly, mind racing. The Sandaime had said that the exams were a replacement for war, a place where each village could show off its best and brightest to lure clients and exert dominance. One just didn't fail the exam 6 times. Eventually it became a waste of resources, sending a genin to other villages only to fail each time. Beyond that, Sarutobi had made it rather clear that killing was a large part of each exam, though the way it was gone about was different in every village. If Kabuto was skilled enough to not only be nominated 7 times by his Jonin instructor, but skilled enough to not end up dead. While I like to think of each exam as a learning experience, Kabuto was saying animatedly. A deck of blank-looking cards had made its way to his hands. Every time I take an exam I get just a little bit better, and I get more information about everyone who takes them. 6 times, you've gotta have a lot of info then, huh? Naruto asked mildly. He was intrigued despite himself. A proud smile fixed itself on Kabuto's face. I'd like to think so, certainly. I keep what I've collected in these cards here. Everything from info on the different villages, to specific ninja, to even ninjutsu. I can keep it all here. He gestured to his deck of cards as he spoke, and laid one out on the floor for the rookies to see. The Konoha genin gathered around just as Kabuto stuck a finger to the center of his card, presumably channeling chakra into it. A map of the elemental nations appeared instantaneously, followed by an easy-to-read bar graph that rose from each of the countries. This card, for example, shows the number of applicants in this exam, and their breakdown by country, the silver-haired genin explained to his enraptured counterparts. As you can see, Konoha had the most applicants in this year's exams, for obvious reasons. While on the other hand, Orogakure no Sato has only sent 1 team. They're a newer village, with fewer shinobi and resources to send out a larger selection. Naruto was impressed. The technique was one that obviously required pinpoint chakra control, so as to both embed the image and then to call it up at will. Kabuto also had to be able to remember the exact chakra pattern for each specific info card, no mean feat. You said you had info on specific shinobi? That was Sasuke, and Naruto felt himself drawn into the conversation simply by virtue of his friend bothering to ask a question at all. The Uchiha was intrigued as well, it seemed. Kabuto nodded, and Sasuke plowed forward. Sabako no Gara of Suna, the Uchiha prodigy demanded. Naruto immediately registered the name as dangerous. Sasuke wouldn't have bothered otherwise. A single eyebrow rose behind the older genin's spectacles. Someone you're worried about? Shouldn't be too hard, you took all the fun out of it by giving me his name. He flipped through his deck for a moment, before coming to a stop at a seemingly random card. Ah, here we go. Sabako no Gara. Keep in mind that all my intel isn't perfect. The genin trailed off as he channeled chakra into the card, and the image of a short, red-haired boy, Naruto recognized him from the Suna team he and his squad had identified, popped up. Sabaka no Gara, rookie out of Sunagakure. Has taken 8 C-ranked missions and, damn, 1 B-ranked. That's downright impressive for a genin, Kabuto said. Huh, it appears that he's come back from every mission completely unharmed. Nervous tittering passed through the group of rookies, each one considerably impressed and wary. The only ones unaffected were Sasuke and Naruto. Sasuke because he had already met the mysterious Suna genin, Naruto because he had simply stopped listening to Kabuto the instant he had started talking about mission history. Who is this guy? Naruto thought, his mind ablaze as theories were created and discarded at the speed of thought. Mission history is classified B-rank info for anyone in Konoha. And this guy has it on some random genin from Suna. Naruto knew from his frequent trips to the shinobi archive that all mission history was reserved for shinobi of Chunin rank or above, B rank, and that was only in Konoha. For Kabuto to have such classified information about a genin from another village, allied though Suna was, it hinted at skills that the silver-haired boy was concealing, and quite well. He also carried the information around freely, which while might be considered stupid by many, Naruto included, hinted at skill the boy wasn't letting anyone see. Kabuto had to be able to protect the same information that he flaunted so easily. Infiltration specialist, Naruto concluded quickly. And a damned good one. Of course, Kabuto's hidden competence raised even more questions in the blonde genin. He was a Konoha ninja, his Hitayate said as much, not to mention he was helping a group of Konoha nin, but what else was he? Was he an ANBU plant, sent into the exams to gather information about foreign ninja? It would certainly explain why he was still being nominated for the Chunin exams after having failed 6 times. Naruto's mind, a whirl as it was, couldn't decide whether to trust or distrust the genin, based on his skill. So, are all the genin like that? Sakura whispered. The pink-haired girl, who had been content, if not brimming with confidence, was visibly shaken at the knowledge of Sabaka no Gaara's resume. Choji, Hinata, and even Ino looked to be feeling the same way, while Shikamaru looked even more annoyed than usual. Kiba and Sasuke were unaffected. Kabuto's smile was all reassurance. There are some standouts, yes. Kusa, Konoha, Suna, Aim, Oto, well perhaps not Oto, it's a new village, everyone in this room is one of the best and brightest from their village. That includes you guys, even though you're rookies. Keep that in mind and you'll be fine. Naruto thought, concerns about Kabuto pushed aside for the moment as he scanned the room of hopefuls. Maybe Sasuke's right. Maybe this will be fun. Well, that's all I've got for now for you guys, Kabuto was saying. Good luck to you all and... The silver-haired genin cut himself off, eyes cutting to the form of a single genin who had launched himself into the air. The boy, garbed in gray camouflage and a mask-style Hitayate, drew and launched 3 kunai at Kabuto's unsuspecting form. The elder genin retreated quickly to avoid a skewering, letting the blades thump harmlessly into the wooden floor. His attention on his attacker, he was unprepared for another genin to appear in his face and swing a brutal, gauntlet-covered fist towards his face. The silver-haired boy leaned back to avoid the blow and made space quickly. Nice dodge, the second attacker grunted, his voice muffled due to bandages that covered his entire face save for one eye. But then, it really wasn't. The rookies in Kabuto had only a moment to process the arrogant statement before Kabuto's glasses shattered, and the boy ended up on the ground vomiting as his inner ear was spun through a vortex. What a pathetic showing from a supposed veteran, the bandaged ninja condescended. He was joined by the boy who had thrown the kunai, and a girl with long hair who was dressed in the same gray camouflage. Put this on your cards, the genin from Otogakure are sure candidates for Chunin. Don't be too sure about that, a voice whispered in the leader's right ear. The single eye widened almost imperceptibly as cold steel touched his jugular vein. The sound of light buzzing in the air filled his ears at the same moment he realized he couldn't move. Nice one, Shika, Ino complimented, her tanto drawn and poised to slit the throat of the lone sound female. The Nara offered no response, focused as he was on the jutsu that had neatly immobilized the 3 foreign genin. You 3 come up in here, acting like you're hot shit. Didn't anyone in that hole you call a village ever teach you not to fuck with a ninja on his home turf? Naruto asked from in front of the Oto leader. His clone pressed its knife harder against the genin's neck, causing a thin trail of blood to appear. The genin from Otogakure can't be sure candidates for Chunin if they're too imbecilic to attack a Konoha nin when he's surrounded by allies. Sasuke's voice was as bored as his expression, though the Uchiha held the final genin by the back of the neck and a kunai at the base of his spine. All the rookies were in similar states of alarm, Naruto noticed with a glance. Kiba had his claws bared, Choji had his fists enlarged, Shino's bugs were all but invisible, but their buzzing was steadily increasing in volume. Hinata had dropped into a reflexive jukin stance, and Sakura held a kunai loosely even as she helped Kabuto to his feet. A feral grin broke across the Jinchuriki's face. The exams technically hadn't started yet, and Naruto realized that they would be well within their rights to execute the Oto Genin right then and there, just as a series of pops filled the stunned silence that had held the rest of the room captive. "Shut up, you worthless maggots," a voice boomed. A group of gray-garbed ninja appeared at the front of the room amid the smoke of multiple shunshin. At their head was a scarred man with a bandana on his head and a trench coat over his torso. "What's this?" the trench coat-wearing man asked, incredulous. He pointed a finger to the back of the room, where the rookie 9 held the Otonin captive. "You, back there. There is no fighting and no killing unless I specifically say so. Do you want to fail?" Naruto's face was set in stone. "Just defending a friend, Examiner-san." His clone dispelled just as Sasuke and Ino removed their blades and Shikamaru withdrew his jutsu. The Oto Genin didn't waste time in making space. An ugly smile spread across the examiner's face. "Heh, can't fault you for that. But don't let me catch it happening again, and that goes for all of you. Anyone who attacks another examinee will be out of here faster than you can blink." The Oto Geikure Genin scurried back to their places, but not before shooting Naruto and the rest of the rookies a glare that promised pain. Naruto returned it with a sneer that could rival Sasuke's. "Fuckers. My name is Marino Ibiki," the examiner announced, the ugly smile firmly in place. "And welcome to the first exam. // Good crop this year." The closed-circuit feeds that were hidden throughout room 301 flashed in front of the scarred man's eyes. No techniques went unobserved, no angle unseen. Ibiki stared at the genin under his thumb from the academy's surveillance room, while an elaborate clone proctored. There had been the usual griping from the research and development department about having to embed a full-blown chakra network into a pile of mud with Ibiki's face, but caution had won out in the end. There was no sense in letting everyone in on the ruse should some chakra-perceptive genin put the pieces together, or if some idiot decided to take his newfound failure out by attacking the head proctor. "TCH, just the usual shit from these guys, Ibiki." "You're slipping, that's what I think," the man's lone companion spoke up. Konoha's head of intelligence rolled his eyes at his subordinate's voice. "I don't make the questions, Anko, just the final one. Over half of this group will be gone by the time I'm done. Care to bet on that?" The purple-haired woman tossed him a devilish smirk. "No." Come on." "No means no, Anko. You're no fun." She pouted, though the cuteness was entirely lost on Ibiki. It was likely because he worked with her. Beyond the otherwise pretty face lay a mind that was as twisted as any in the shinobi world, easily as twisted as his own or even more so. In his lower moments he wondered if such a thing was conducive to loyalty, before brushing it aside as he did with just about everything that was Mitarashi Anko. The woman wasn't worth much thought, it only ever led him in circles. The scarred man couldn't help his smile as he watched his doppelganger dispatch another trio of genin. "Izumo got that one," he heard Anko murmur from beside him. Ibiki nodded absently as he watched two furious wannabes join their shamed teammate. "TCH, missed it myself. You're too focused on one detail without seeing the bigger picture, Anko," the superior lectured. "You'll never catch any decent number if you don't observe how things react with each other in that room, rather than looking at one particular genin." The woman sneered. "Is that what you told those losers when you were teaching them?" She nodded to the group of examiners. His smug silence was all the answer she needed, and the sneer morphed into a scowl. It transformed into disgust as she moved her eyes to a different feed. "God, I wish we could fucking disqualify the goddamn bloodlines. Fuckers don't have an original bone in their bodies." Ibiki's own eyes moved to where Anko's rested, watching as two Hyugas and the last Uchiha took full advantage of their eyes. Exasperation crept up the man's spine at his subordinate's familiar hatred of all things Kekkai Genkai. It was speculated that Orochimaru's ruthless pursuit of perfection had been largely due to the abundance of skilled bloodline users in Konoha. It was predictable that Anko, who hated everything that had to do with her former sensei, would come to resent the people who embodied the reason for the man's betrayal. It was unreasonable, however, and Ibiki sighed. They can't be blamed for using what they were born with. And if they're caught, they get written up the same as everyone else. 2 points, Ibiki. Your ridiculous fucking rule makes it so that they can openly use their eyes and not get disqualified fully. That's bullshit right there. The man rolled his eyes. You know the purpose behind the test, Anko. You know they're supposed to cheat. If they happen to be genetically predisposed to doing well, then good for them. His eyes flickered to another screen and his voice cut the purple-haired woman off before she had time to retort. I'm more concerned about these jokers. He pointed to a trio of Konoha genin who had been docked 4 times each time more ridiculous than the last. One had had the gall to openly copy an answer from the grassneen next to him. Anko watched incredulously as Ibiki played back the tape of the 3 on a separate screen. Who the fuck are these guys? She seemed caught between open disgust and humor at watching 3 wannabes take Ibiki's 2-point deduction rule to the limit. Can you please disqualify these fuckers? I'm starting to get offended, Ibiki. The head proctor snorted. It's done. This one just got caught a 5th time. He pointed to a red-haired girl who stood up. Her 2 Konoha teammate followed quickly, expressions of rage fixed on their faces. Anko shook her head with a laugh. They can't have seriously thought they'd get away with some shit like that? The hell is this village coming to? I'm tempted to go kill their sensei just for nominating them. How about you? The woman turned as Ibiki brushed past her and moved to a new monitor. Ibiki? The scarred special jonin typed a few letters on a nearby keyboard, and a side screen lit up with the image of the 3 disqualified genin walking briskly down the hallway away from room 301. I'm curious, was all the man offered. About 3 losers who shouldn't be been nominated in the first place? TCH, suit yourself. Ibiki brushed aside his companion's criticism with practiced ease. His stubbornness was rewarded a minute later, and his eyes widened almost comically as the 3 shared a smirk before disappearing in identical clouds of smoke. Kage Bunshin, Ibiki breathed, stunned. His stupor lasted for a moment only before he burst into a flurry of motion and button pressing. The examiners hadn't bothered screening the genin in room 301, given that the location was known only to the genin, a select few jonin, and the examiners. And yet 3 Kage Bunshin had infiltrated the exam for some unknown purpose. Anko, bring up footage of the 3 who were just disqualified. I want them from the second they set foot in the building, he barked. A smarted shinobi would have followed the order without question, yet Anko raised her eyebrows. Those losers? The fuck you want them for? Just do it. Calm your tits, Ibiki, the woman muttered, sifting through footage of the examinees with trained eyes. The image of the 3 in question came up, and Anko followed it backwards at a good clip, from their entrance to the room and earlier, until the 3 simply disappeared into smoke. The fuck? Slow it down, Ibiki ordered. Anko did as she was told, and froze the image of the 3 disappearing into smoke. Her superior moved in front of her, calling up the same image from a different camera that gave a better view of the side room the genin had been in when they were formed. The screen blinked once, and the image of 3 Konoha genin standing abreast greeted the 2 proctors. A blonde boy, a blonde girl, and a brown-haired boy with a dog. Asumas Teen 10, Ibiki stated, having recognized both the QB container and the daughter of his old boss. Anko nodded absently, watching intently as Naruto formed the cross-shaped seal for the Kage Bunshin and 3 doppelgangers appeared in front of him. The 2 proctors shared an incredulous glance, both at the kid knowing the technique and at the deception, before quickly moving to the screens that were streaming live. Got him, Anko called, pointing to the blonde boy sitting next to one of the Hyugas she had disparaged earlier. Naruto sat expressionless, carefully yet quickly writing 9 answers down on his test paper. Ibiki shook his head. The Kage Bunshin allowed for the user to absorb information from its clones instantaneously. The boy had gotten all the stolen answers in the span of a single second when his clones had dispelled. Anko whistled appreciatively from next to him. God damn. The kid's good, Ibiki admitted. Unperturbed and unaware of the awe he had inspired in his superiors, Naruto sat in room 301 having just finished writing the answer to the 9th question. That's unhealthy. The purple-haired woman was insane. And it wasn't just your run-of-the-mill shinobi insanity either. The female proctor was certifiably batshit crazy, in Naruto's esteemed opinion. It wasn't the way she had announced herself, by hurling herself through a third-story window with a banner proclaiming her as the second exams proctor. It wasn't the way she dressed, a full fishnet bodysuit covered only by a beige trench coat that was doing a wonderful job of distracting most of the male applicants. And it wasn't even the glint of something in her eyes that let everyone who looked at her know that this woman was dangerous, and not just in the usual ways. No one should ever look at the forest of death with that kind of familiar fondness, Naruto concluded, shaking his head. Training Area 44 was referred to as such by anyone who had had the honor of visiting it, Naruto knew. And it was held as gospel that if you were good enough to make it from one side to the other, avoiding the multitude of murderous beasts, plants, and leftover traps. From hundreds of shinobi who had trained there in the past that no one had disabled, you were probably good enough to be considered for Chunin. At least we won't be stuck behind a desk for this one, he muttered, rubbing his temples. His teammates nodded when they heard. None of the three were fond of written tests, and the one they had just come through had been more trying than usual. True that, Kiba agreed. That was fucking annoying. Ino scoffed. Says the guy who had his dog get all the answers for him. Dunno how your stupid ass didn't get us all disqualified for that stunt. 2 points, you dumb blonde. Even if they saw Akamaru, they only could have docked us 2 points for cheating once. Kiba was all smug satisfaction after having figured out the gaping loophole in the test's rules. Ino wasn't about to let him stay that way without a fight. Yeah, 2 points. That's 2 points that I wasn't docked, because I used something more subtle than putting my goddamn dog on my head. 'Cause possessing Sakura is subtle? I'm surprised the bitch hasn't decked you yet. As if she could, idiot, and it doesn't have to be subtle to her. Just so long as the examiners didn't catch it, Ino replied with confidence. Naruto rolled his eyes and sighed. He had little doubt that the examiners had caught Ino red-handed, and that the same 2-point rule had kept her from being immediately disqualified just like it had Kiba. But his head was throbbing, his stupid clones had dispelled all at the same time, the idiots, and he really wanted no part of his teammates' arguments on the best of days. Absently, he wondered at his own chosen method to pass the first exam. Keeping his clones active throughout the first exam had turned out to be a stroke of genius, if an inadvertent one. And while they had made sure to be well away from the examination room when they dispelled, there was still the possibility that they had been followed or otherwise seen. And it was as Naruto was lost in thought, only half listening to the crazy proctor describe their next torture, that he heard the whistle of a kunai through the air and felt the telltale signs of someone using shunshin to appear behind him. The blade stung as it neatly sliced his cheek, but Naruto disregarded it as he surreptitiously drew one of his knuckle knives in anticipation of what was by far the greater threat. The blonde thrust his blade backwards quickly, and withheld a triumphant smirk as it softly pressed into the flesh of his attacker just as he felt the cold metal of a kunai touch his throat. Naruto started as he felt warm breath on his ear, and only managed to refrain from activating his wind chakra and skewering the person when he recognized the husky voice of the proctor. As it was, he upped the pressure of his knife significantly when she licked his face. The fuck? I do love the way blood feels as it rolls over the tongue, she whispered. And that means you're not a clone. Naruto stiffened as his deception was revealed. Thought you got away with that one, did you, runt? Let me tell you something, kiddo, this is the big leagues, and it's tough guys like you whose blood usually gets spilled all over this forest. The last part was said loudly for the benefit of their audience, the entire assembled group of genin. The message was received loud and clear, if the outbreak of muttering was any indication. It seemed all the proctors were gifted at making the genin doubt themselves. Naruto stumbled a step as Anko roughly pushed him off of her. The blonde reholstered his drawn knife and met her eyes. There was a glint in them. It was different from the maddened one that had been there previously, though Naruto couldn't quite put his finger on it. She looked like she was weighing a decision. Definitely sizing me up for something. Distantly, the boy wondered if she knew that the Sandaime had all but promoted him already. The old man hadn't been clear as to who knew and who didn't. His thoughts were shattered as a moment later, in an interesting role reversal, Anko palmed a kunai and brought it to rest on the stomach of a grass genin who had managed to sneak up behind her. Well, there's someone to avoid, Naruto concluded swiftly. The girl was on the grass team that Team 10 had identified as mildly dangerous, had breezed through the first exam, and had managed to sneak up on the examiner of all people. Naruto turned back to his teammates as the tall girl handed the proctor her kunai back with her tongue, deciding that he had had enough craziness for the moment. We're avoiding the grass team, he told Ino and Kiba. Both looked like they wanted to know what the hell had just happened, but Naruto's tone brooked no argument, and neither wanted to draw his annoyance at this point. Both of them knew they were on a short leash after the long bitch fest they had put him through with regards to Yamato. Listen up, maggots. The proctor was talking again, passing out stacks of paper. Each team gets one scroll, either a heaven or an earth. You have 5 days to retrieve the scroll that is opposite to yours and get to the tower at the center of the forest. Only teams with both scrolls will pass this portion. She stopped at the front of the group, having finished passing out the sheets of paper. Naruto received his as they made their way backwards. It was a waiver. Killing is allowed. The statement was met with renewed murmurs among the genin, but Anko didn't miss a beat. The waivers in your hands need to be signed before you can enter the forest. If the threat of death is too much for you, you can quit. The last sentence left nothing to the imagination as to what she would think of you if you decided to cut your losses. Finally, only a full team can pass. If a member is killed, the whole team fails. If a member is unable to continue otherwise, the whole team fails. A devilish smirk split her face as she surveyed the genin in front of her. Try not to end up dead, kiddies. Now, one representative from each team will come up and receive their assigned scroll. Naruto locked eyes with Kiba for an instant, and knew they were on the same page. Let's go, Akamaru, the Inuzuka said. The dog ninja bent down to pick up his puppy, slipping his free hand into a side pouch as he did so. Ino rolled her eyes as Kiba bounded forward, pushing and shoving his way to the front of the crowd amidst more than a few grumbles from the other genin. Idiot's gonna kill us all with that attitude, she mused. Naruto shook his head a bit fondly, and turned to Ino with a slight smile. Funny, thought the same thing about you when we first started, he said. It was a testament to how much Ino had grown that she was able to laugh. People change. And Asuma managed to give me a pretty solid wake-up call. Naruto snorted. Must have been big. You were ready to jump Sasuke's bones back in the academy. Ino shrugged. Guess so. Like I said, people change, and there are other bones I'd rather jump these days. The girl's face was straight as a board as she said it, and she casually buffed her nails on her purple top. A raised eyebrow was tossed Naruto's way, and the boy couldn't help the flush that crept up his neck and across his cheeks. He was saved from total embarrassment, however, as Kiba reappeared with their scroll and reasserted some form of sanity. Got it, he announced, drawing Ino and Naruto from their byplay. Heaven, the boy whispered. Both Ino and Naruto nodded, their attention fully on the coming task. I'll take it for now, Naruto said. We'll switch holders every hour, but there'll probably be a mad rush at the start. It went unsaid that Naruto was easily the most skilled of the team and thus was the most logical choice to hold on to their metaphorical meal ticket. Ino and Kiba nodded resolutely, and the three moved to the nearest open gate. A single, nondescript Chunin manned it, and he didn't react in the slightest to Team 10's arrival. So how many did you mark? Naruto asked Kiba the second they were out of hearing range of any and all genin. 13 definitely, Kiba stated with certainty. I bumped a few more late, but I'm not sure if I laid enough of my stuff on them. Naruto nodded and locked eyes with Ino, whose confusion lasted only a few seconds before she put the pieces together. Your nose, she asked for clarification. Both Naruto and Kiba smiled at the girl, though Kiba was as smug as usual. You betcha, Blondie. Me and Akamaru can find at least half of these fuckers no problem, now, the Inuzuka boasted. His two blonde teammates both rolled their eyes, but refrained from saying anything, electing to let him have his moment. The Inuzuka and their canine familiars were famous for their abilities to act as bloodhounds, if given a scent to follow. Kiba, knowing this, carried around a special concoction that he and Akamaru could recognize and sniff out from miles away. It was colorless, completely odorless to anyone without a nose of similar strength, and was laid on a target with a single touch if done correctly. Heh, so we're good to go so long as you didn't manage to bump the half that had entirely heaven scrolls, Naruto joked. Got it in one, Naruto. Hey! You down there, the Chunin gate guard called. The exam is about to start. The man made 3 hand seals and the large lock that held the gate closed undid itself and fell to the forest floor. The gate opened with a groan, and Team 10 burst forward into the darkness.
That's it for today. Remember to show your support to the creator of this story if you enjoyed it. If you would like more parts of the story to be uploaded, leave a comment and subscribe to get notified when the story continues. Bye-bye for now, and I hope that you all have a wonderful rest of your day.